Okay. For those of you who didn't join me last night, let me just give you the one introductory note for the Akeidah that is quite important. The Akeidah opens, "Vaychiach har dvarim ha'eleh." And it was after these things, right? Which is one of those cryptic statements, like after what things? So what I suggested last night is that the simplest pshat, right? Rashi gives all types of explanations, but the simplest pshat is that it's after the story of Yishmael, right? That Yishmael was kicked out because if you go to pasuk bet, right, the pasuk says, "Vayomer kachna et bincha et yichidcha asher ahavta et Yitzchak," and Rashi says, "Why do you say your son, your only son who loved Yitzchak?" So Rashi says, "Your son, I have two sons. Your only son, they're each the only child of their mother. Who you love, I love both of them." Okay, Yitzchak, right? But simple pshat is that this isn't to, and then Rashi says, why does Hashem do this? To make it easier for him, right? He's slowly getting to the point. Simple pshat is the opposite. He's digging in the knife, right? He's making it harder because he's saying, Et yechidcha. It's, you used to have other children, but I've just made you kick them out, right? Lot was your family member, he's gone. For all you know, he's dead, right? As the Torah never actually tells you he ever sees Lot again, or even knows that he survives Sodom, right? And even if he survives Sodom, he doesn't ever meet him again because he goes and lives up in the mountains, right? Lot, Yishmael was kicked out of the house, and at this point, right, Hashem says, okay, you're left with one son, and I want you to take that son, and I want you to kill him. V'lech lecha l'eretz haMoriah, and then he invokes Lech Lecha, which, as Zev put it very nicely last night, this is much worse than the first Lech Lecha, because the first Lech Lecha asked him to give up his past, and the new Lech Lecha tells him to give up his future. Right? That's sort of the backdrop to the intensity of the Akeidah. There's a lot to be said on the Akeidah, kamuvan. Let's see what we can do though in a few minutes. There is a lot of discussion as to what exactly was the point of the Akeidah. Right? What was the test of the Akeidah? Assuming this was a test and not a punishment, we'll leave the Rashbam aside for a moment. Assuming this was a test, right? What was the test? Many modern Orthodox people love. This is like the Torah Umata moment. Who do they love quoting?
The Rav.
Who liked quoting? What? Kierkegaard, right? Søren Kierkegaard, right? The Christian theologian who wrote a book on the Akeidah called Fear and Trembling. Kierkegaard's theory is as follows. Like I said, it becomes very it has become very popular in the modern Orthodox community. L'tov l'ra. Some people think it's popular for good, and some people think that it's a mistake, but whatever. So Kierkegaard says, in life, we have two central obligations. Normally, they overlap. What are those obligations? Morality and God. Right? Morality and God. Normally, those overlap. Right? Normally, God tells us to be moral. Right? Because God really wants us to be moral. But really, our main obligation is to God, is to commandedness, and therefore, were a situation to arise in which God would command something which was unethical, we would be obligated to do it. And therefore, the test of the Akeidah for Kierkegaard is what has become known as the test of the teleological suspension of the ethical. Okay, that's a fancy phrase, but you'll see it every so often. Teleological suspension of the ethical, meaning the only thing which justifies giving up morality is the recognition that there is something above morality, namely divine command. And the test of Avram was, would you believe, right? Do you really believe that even ethics are subject to divine command? Right? Now, there is a second component to Kierkegaard, which people quote less. Right, that's half of Kierkegaard's argument. The other half of Kierkegaard's argument is that the test of the Akeidah was that Avram had to believe in the impossible. Because he had to believe that God wanted him to kill his son, and he had to believe that his son was not going to die and was going to continue his legacy because God had promised it. So he had to be capable of paradoxical belief, of believing that he was going to do this and that somehow it would work out anyways, right? So it's a test of faith, and it's a test of his commitment to divine command over morality. Right now, Kant also saw the Akeidah as the test of morality versus divine command, but he thought that Avram failed because Avram gave preference to God over morality, which in Kant's world you're not allowed to do because you have to follow the categorical imperative, and you always have to follow morality under all circumstances. Now the Rav did love Kierkegaard on this, and he quoted him, and Rav Jonanthan loved this very much. Rav Jonanthan used to build on this piece in Kierkegaard and say this was not
by name.
Yeah, of course.
That's just so interesting that I thought that we're not allowed to think of non-theologians that are not necessarily Jewish.
Oh, this was standard in the medieval period. In the medieval period, they would talk about Tanakh with Christians because they learned Tanakh. Right? They also cared about what Tanakh said.
Some of them were better.
Some of them were better than others at interpreting it.
No,
yes.
I said some of them were better than us.
Oh, yes, that too. But they also loved us, right? You look at a lot of the medieval manuscripts we have of Christian Latin Chumashim, and they have Latin translation of the Chumash on top, and then they have Rashi underneath because they loved Rashi.
Really? That's so interesting.
It is. When I saw it
against them, right?
I mean, yes, obviously, but I went once to there was a manuscript exhibit at the Jewish Museum on the Upper East Side, and they had this. It was really quite cool. They also had the Rambam's handwritten Perush HaMishnayot and Mishnah Torah, including his drawing of the Beis HaMikdash. And I brought my Rambam, and you could see where the Rambam had reorganized prakim for conceptual purposes. It was really cool. Close parentheses, wow. But it was really cool. Now, Rav Jonanthan very much liked this idea, this notion of the teleological suspension of the ethical. Now, the lesson for many of these people is that in theory God would want you to do that, but in practice He didn't want you, right? Meaning the test was to see, were you willing to show preference to commandedness over morality? And the lesson was that God doesn't usually want that, right? Meaning, right, that's the test and then the conclusion of it. Rav Jonanthan pushed this a bit farther, and he said, when you invoke the teleological suspension of the ethical, it's only legitimate if you actually are suspending ethics purely out of commitment to God. The real challenge is to make sure that if you do that, it's not because you identify with the unethical activity, right? It's because you identify more with commandedness than you do with ethics.
What's the name of the Christian theologian again?
Soren Kierkegaard.
Soren Kierkegaard.
S-O-R-E-N, but not really, because there's one of those letters is not really an E. It's S-O-R-E-N, but it has a dash through it, and Kierkegaard is...
You'll find it on Google.
Yeah, exactly.
But he's not Christian, right? He's more...
He's a Christian theologian. Of course he is.
It's existentialist.
He is an existentialist, but he is a Christian theologian.
S-O-R-K-A-O-R.
Okay, so just quickly, you'll Google it. 1 second. So, but Rav Jonanthan took this to another one, and this is for today. This is what I'll suffice on. Is he said, okay, where do you see this most pointedly? So, if I said, besides the Akeidah, what is probably the most the problem in Torah that bothers people the most on the plane of ethics? Amalek, right? Amalek. Maybe Shiva Amin as well, depending on how you understand the obligation there. But for sure, Amalek.
Right?
What?
The book is Fear and Trembling.
Fear and Trembling. Yeah. If my books were unpacked, I would lend you it. I have more than one copy. So Rav Jonanthan used this to explain Shaul, because he said as follows. He said, killing Amalek is immoral, right? Annihilating Amalek is immoral. The only thing that can really justify it is the teleological suspension of the ethical. But the key to the teleological suspension of the ethical, and I don't want to say that too many more times, right, is that you really buy in to Tzivui Hashem. And that's where Avram succeeds, Right? He really doesn't want to do it. Right? The whole Akeidah story emphasizes how he doesn't really want to do it. Right? It's the one he loves. It's his only son. Right? It's clear. No one thinks that Avram wanted. That's not true. There are Hasidic thinkers who think Avram wanted to kill his son by that point. I don't want to get into those. The Kierkegaard thinks that. Right? The Kierkegaard thinks. Right? The Kierkegaard's shot in the Akeidah is that everyone has an inner demon, and once he got to that point, he really wanted to do it. And the reason the Malach had to tell him, Avram, stop it, was because Avram, at that point, right, almost needed to express, like once he got to that, and yes,
hear the demon. I just heard that once he got the tzivah, he didn't want to stop until.
No, but it was also like his. Anyways, I don't really. It's a weird try. Whatever.
Ruffle of a tongue on the.
Exactly. I think that's what it is. I have to look back at the Kierkegaard. But Rabbi Jonanthan said, okay, so the only thing that justifies genocide, even theoretically, is Tzivui Hashem, because God is above all. What's the problem? How do you prove that you're only buying into a Tzivui because it's a Tzivui and not because you've corrupted your own ethics, and that you are taking advantage of Tzivui to do something which should be wrong?
If you don't believe in the ethics that you, if you don't believe in.
Good. How would you prove that?
How does it demonstrate?
Massacre.
What? You would go.
So this is Rabbi Jonanthan's chap. No. So let's jump to it. What happened if you don't follow the tzivui ad hasof, right? So Rabbi Jonanthan just say, why was Hashem so angry at Shaul? Because Hashem told him kill Amalek, and he did, except for the animals and Agag. But Rabbi Jonanthan said, wait a second. If he had mercy on Agag, and he had mercy on the animals, what does that show? That why was he okay killing the rest of Amalek? What? Not because of Tzivui Hashem. If he was wholeheartedly Tzivui Hashem, he would have kept it. The second he started weighing in with his own emotions, oh, I have mercy on Agag. Oh, we'll use the animals for karbanot instead of listening to what God actually said. That showed that why was he okay with genocide?
Because
yeah, and Rabbi Jonanthan, his chap was that Shaul wasn't punished for not killing Agag. He was punished because by not killing Agag or the animals, it showed that the reason he was okay killing Amalek was because he really didn't think that genocide should be wrong, because he wasn't just giving over to Tzivui Hashem, because he was making his own cheshbonot. And the only thing that justifies a horribly anti-moral act, or something that should be immoral, is because you buy into Tzivui Hashem. If you don't buy into Tzivui Hashem, evidenced by the fact that you make your own cheshbonot, memela, everything else is just you being immoral. Right? So, just to summarize, this is one mahalach, and we will do another mahalach tomorrow, right? The teleological suspension, the ethical, the Kierkegaardian view of this is that Avram's fundamental test was to show that he recognized that as important as morality is, it is superseded, or it's really a subset of Tzivui Hashem, and therefore it's justifiable to violate what is normally ethical if God commands it. But Rabbi Jonanthan's addition to it is that is only true if you're doing it because you buy into Tzivui Hashem. If you don't, then that just shows a lack in your ethical commitments, and then you're held accountable because you're making the cheshbon to do something which should be wrong rather than relying on Hashem. And that's how he explains the Shaul Amalek. Okay? That's one pshat in the Akeidah. We'll do a second pshat tomorrow. There's so many pshatim on the Akeidah, but at some point in your life you should hear this one, because you'll hear it quoted either by Christian theologians or by modern Orthodox people who are obsessed with Kierkegaard.